What's happening, guys? Happy bonus show. Yep, that's right. Another bonus show here at the Dynasty WarZone. That's right. The People's Dynasty podcast. On today's show, it's more underlying hidden training camp storylines that aren't getting enough attention. And I'll tell you who else is starting to get a little attention. That is my co-host for the evening. He is none other than our player profiler, producer. Try saying that 3 times fast. That alliteration, it'll get you. But he's back for more. 3 shows in a row with producer Kevin. Kevin, man, what's going on?
Not much, man. I'm heating up. We're on a roll here, so I love it. Just keep it going. And
are you old enough to remember NBA Jam?
Oh yeah, that was definitely an NBA Jam reference.
Because when you made 3 in a row, what were you? What were you?
You're on fire.
Come on, man. Say it with some heart. You're on fire. Yes. Every basketball that comes out of your hand is on flames. Yeah. This is 3 shows in a row. You jumped on with me last Thursday night. We did the first 3 storylines we wanted to cover. Yep. And then due to a personal matter for Jerry, you jumped on with me on Sunday night in the main show.
Yeah.
And here we are again. So 3 shows in a row. Kevin is on fire, man. I got to tell you, Kevin's going to help us with some audio stuff tonight. When you go to YouTube, when you go to playerprofiler.com and look at the YouTube content featuring the Dynasty WarZone, or specifically my ugly ass, is that it looks better because of the good work that this guy does. He is our video editor. And, dude, you do a tremendous job. And I really appreciate all you do behind the scenes. And now I got you in front of the camera.
That's right. I do both. I'm very versatile, utility guy. You know what I'm saying? I do it all. I try to at least.
Shout out to Mike in the chat. Yeah, Mike, you're dead on it, brother. When you hit 3 in a row, it was boom chakalaka. Boom.
Oh yeah, great call, Mike.
Yeah, Mike,
what's up, Mike?
Mike is in the chat early. Dig that. But yeah, this is how you wind up, with your own show on the Dynasty WarZone network. My buddy Dallas Hyder does the rookie rundown here on the Dynasty WarZone feed. Because again, if you're new over from the player profiler feed, we have Dallas. Dallas does our rookie content. He started off as a guy that just did 1 show with me. We have Jesse, Mike, and now Austin. Those guys were all 3 former Patreons or patrons. Was it Patreons? Patrons.
They're patrons of your Patreon.
I like it. See, this is why we have – check out the big brain on Kev. Yeah, that's why we have Kev on here, because he's a smart motherfucker. But, yeah, so Jesse – it used to be Jesse, Mike, and Chad. Now it's Jesse, Mike, and Austin. Austin is new, replaced Mike, who just has – I think he's got like a litter of kids. He gets after it, apparently. Brother Mike gets after it. So lots of youngins and a young family. So Mike has stepped away, but – those guys do another Dynasty-themed show called the Dynasty War Games. We have a limited run from our buddies Seth and Kyle from the Fantasy Football Fellas. By the way, the Fantasy Football Fellas was the podcast that got me into podcasting. Seth and Kyle, it feels so good to hear them back on the air the first time after 3 years. They're the best of friends, and you totally hear it in their podcast repartee. The camaraderie between those two is fantastic. So, dude, the network's on fire. So if you're here from Player Profiler, please subscribe to both, because a lot of good content coming out here. Like I said, we're knocking out 5 shows a week right now. I don't know that we'll do a bonus Dynasty WarZone in season. I think we're going to keep the main show. I got to keep Kevin employed, right?
That's right. You got to pay to keep the lights on.
What would you be producing if we're not producing content for Player Profiler? And I'm actually going to make your life better and harder at the same time. Are you ready?
Sure.
So we're going to segment the show. So we're going to do good people, bad tweets. I've got a couple of other segments I don't want to give away right now, but it's going to be a new look to the Dynasty WarZone, because I don't want it to be like every other Dynasty podcast, and nothing against those shows. But I want it to have a uniqueness, a crispness to it that you're just not getting in other places. So when you hear that first show, the week of, I guess, week 1, that Wednesday leading up to the very first week of the NFL season, right, you'll hear a new format to the DWZ that we really hope appeals to the Dynasty gamer. And the cool thing is there's a segment for everybody. I'm not going to go any further. I don't want to spoil it. I'm not saying people rip off the Dynasty WarZone, but people rip off the Dynasty WarZone. So we're going to jump into it. There are 2 YouTube feeds, ours and Player Profiler. So subscribe to both. And 2 podcast feeds, ours and Player Profiler. A lot of good shows. Again, I always say treat it like a Brazilian steakhouse. If you want more chicken, leave the little green disc up, they'll bring you more chicken or more filet or more lamb or more whatever it is. But when you're done, or when they bring that particular flavor around and you don't dig it, like on Player Profiler, hey, I don't really like, best ball content. Don't listen to it. Just delete it out of your podcast queue and wait for the next episode of the Dynasty WarZone or the Sonic Truth or the GOAT District or all the Dynasty-based content. So a lot of good stuff. I really recommend you subscribe in all 4 places because you'll always have it, and then you can pick through it and enjoy it at your leisure. So don't really have a commercial right now, but we do have good people, bad tweets. And you know who the tweeter was, Kev?
You?
It was me. That's right, you filthy bastards. It was me. But this was a good tweet. So there's this tweet going around, and if you want to see the tweet that I tweeted on X, you make it make sense, is you go there and search DWZ Memphis, and it was on Thursday the 17th, and I posted this video that's been going around of Adrian Peterson, and loved Adrian Peterson. And it was like, this is what Bijan Robinson is supposed to live up to, right? The best. Have you heard this, Kev? The best prospect since Adrian Peterson.
I have.
You know what my problem with that is?
What's that?
No, I don't want to gatekeep the industry. I don't want to be the crusty old bastard that's like, you got to be, 50,007 years old to have an opinion on guys from the past. But I'm going to be very leery of a 21-year-old or a 23-year-old, and I want them to break into Dynasty. We need young blood. We need new people
for sure
to give us opinion. Just be careful of the hyperbole, guys. Be careful of this is the best, because what you're doing is you're not being unique, and that's going to get you washed out of the Dynasty and the content creation space in general. You don't want to be a ripoff of someone else. Like, I would be doing myself and the listeners of this show, the loyal listeners that have been with us for almost 6 years, a disservice if I tried to rip off the Podfather or Rich from the Dynasty Nerds. I am me, and my content is my content. So be very careful next year, because you know who the generational talent is coming out next year, right?
Marvin Harrison
Jr. And I'm already hearing it. I'm already hearing the people going, he's the best wide receiver prospect since Calvin Johnson. And I'm like, look, young Sparky, all of 23. So how much, so you're 23, born in 2000, as odd as that is to say at 23 years old, early 20s, you weren't even born with a 19 in your birth year, but that be as it may. But in 2000, when you were born for a 23-year-old content creator, when Calvin Johnson was in college, you were 4, 5, or 6. Because that was 2004, 5, and 6. And then he was a rookie. And maybe you were grinding the tape on your Fisher-Price, Tickle Me Elmo little tablet deal. I don't think so. Just be careful that you're not parakeeting what everyone else is saying. If you want to say Marvin Harrison or Bijan Robinson or whomever is a generational talent, okay. But are you sure? There's this great reference point. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called playerprofiler.com. Playerprofiler.com. You go in there, you throw in some of these legendary players, or even some of the guys of more recent history, but it's not good enough to say that Bijan Robinson's the best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley. Because if you pull him up athletically, I don't think Bijan's a better athlete overall than Saquon Barkley. Now, is he better than Zeke? Sure. Zeke was a hell of a football player. I don't think Zeke's ever going to be confused with the athlete. But just be very careful when you say someone's better than, especially you'll never hear me go back and say, this is the best running back prospect since Gale Sayers. I didn't even know who Gale Sayers was till my dad told me about Gale Sayers or Walter Payton or Emmitt Smith, although I saw plenty of Emmitt Smith. But that's my point.
Right.
I'm glad you're excited. I'm glad you're creating content. I'm glad you're having fun. Just be careful with the hyperbole. Or if you want to be hyperbolic, totally cool with that too. Just be careful in how you frame your hyperbolic nature. Am I going over the top with this? Am I just trying to set some realistic bumpers for the young guys in the industry? Because I want to help them. I don't want to criticize them. I want to make them sound more crisp and less like a parrot.
I'm 29 years old. I do not reference Jerry Rice. Never saw it. I saw him at the tail end of his 49ers career, and actually, sadly enough, remember him as an Oakland Raider. So I don't say anything about Jerry Rice.
You don't have any love for the Seahawk year?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that too. That was a good call. Yeah, so that's my thing of Jerry Rice. So, no, I'm not mentioning Jerry Rice. Real quick on Adrian Peterson, did you see that they actually gave out the number 28, the Minnesota Vikings did, to a certain wide receiver, former first-round pick in camp? Did you see who that was?
Was it Laquan Treadwell?
It was N'Keal Harry.
N'Keal Harry. Woof.
Yes.
Well,
I couldn't believe it. My buddy's a Vikings fan. Shout out Whit. And I was like, dude, what is this
criminal.
Blasphemy? What is this blasphemy? It's crazy.
I mean, no. As long as he doesn't potentially wear it in season, I'm like, like Bill Belichick gives all the rookies like 55 and 52. And
yeah.
So as long as it's just like a training camp thing, you get my thumbs up. So if you're a young content creator like young Kevin here, create your own voice and be careful how you frame a prospect. And it's like, if you go in and do the research, always, give attribute what you've, used, whether you get it Player Profiler, DLF, Dynasty Nerds, what have you, whatever you use. Or if you watch like YouTube video and say, hey, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has better speed than ... I think he has better hands than ... Write that down. Do your film study, because there's plenty of film on these legends out there.
Yeah.
Then you can go back and validate it, because a lot of the legends are in Player Profiler system. Then you can validate that. Then you make yourself sound super smart. Hey, you know what? Marvin Harrison has a better 40 than. He has a better spark score than. He has this than. And then when you watch the tape and see, now you're making yourself sound more informed. You're making yourself sound more educated, and you don't sound like everybody else in the industry. So be very careful when you do this. And this is actually just a good people, that's me, giving actionable advice to young people, because I'm really excited with some of the young people I see creating Dynasty and fantasy content out there. Super stoked to see what went down at the Fantasy Football Expo. I'm going to get back there one of these days. I went to the inaugural, and I want to get back. But remember to find your own voice, and don't make silly comps just because they're there.
I need to get to the expo. That's on my bucket list for sure.
Because next year, if I hear you comping and saying Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best prospect since ... it's going to be this.
Federal prison. Federal fucking prison. If you're that fucking stupid and somebody else wants to do it, knock yourself out. There's not enough money in it.
Be yourself, or we have to throw you in federal fucking prison for making bad comps. So there you go. A little bit of news this week. The Patriots signed a running back. Maybe you heard of him. His name is Ezekiel Elliott. I don't want to make this a 2-hour podcast. So what I will tell you is, if you want my opinion on that, you can go to patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. I did an emergency podcast on that Monday night for our patrons. And then on Wednesday night, I hopped on the Dynasty Roundtable with Seth and Matt of the Dynasty Roundtable on the Player Profiler YouTube network. I assume at some point it'll be an audio podcast, but it's out there. And if you really want the nuts and bolts, and I think we covered it from one end of the spectrum to the other with both Zeke and Ramondre, as well as Breece Hall and Dalvin. If you want all that, totally cool. We'll hit a couple of bits of news. Came out today on Thursday. This is fresh news that Joe Mixon was not guilty of aggravated menacing. This is good news. This is great. I've been bullish on Joe Mixon all year. I was telling people to go buy him in February when all this alleged nonsense happened.
Sure.
And I was buying him. I was buying Joe Mixon on the 1-year premise. Like in a contender in Dynasty, I was buying Joe Mixon on a 1-year premise. I never pretended like I had a crystal ball and was be like, yeah, Joe Mixon's going to be a 2-year asset. Except you fast forward, 3 months, and Joe Mixon cuts his contract basically in half.
Yeah.
He's making $6 million a year, but it basically keeps him in Cincinnati for the next couple of years. That doesn't mean they won't use Brown or Travion Williams, or maybe they bring someone else in next year. but I think it keeps him around. You've got to be excited about the legal news and then the potential 2-year window for Joe Mixon.
Well, it's definitely the best outcome possible for him. I mean, that's for sure. I did see that there's a chance that the NFL might still take something in their own hands, just the fact that there has been some past stuff, which might mean a couple games. But like you said, this is good.
I'm gonna be honest because I normally don't care what the NFL says or does about suspensions. They're basically a private business. They can handle it however they want.
Right.
I think it would be some whack ass shit if they literally gave him as many games as Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
He literally mobbed a dude.
Yeah.
Put him in the hospital. And Joe Mixon has done, but you're not wrong. I've heard the same thing about Tyreek Hill. Yeah. Tyreek Hill had the incident at the marina, and due to his incidents in college, the alleged incident with his child's mother a couple of years ago, they said the same thing, that he could get a couple of get your attention type games. So
exactly,
be on the lookout for that. I think that's pretty good. Treylon Burks kind of got lucky, I guess, man.
Yes.
Little LCL. But what does that tell you?
People were writing him off. People were ready for the worst, myself included. But yeah, I guess he looks like a 2 to 4 week thing, which maybe could be a little longer. That's a bad injury to have.
You know, the best way of putting this with training camp stuff that I've heard all year, and it's going to be my new thing going forward, by the way, with attribution, but I was the pioneer of it in the fantasy and dynasty space.
Okay.
Heard my man RJ Bell, Dream Preview podcast, and they were talking about this from a gambling standpoint. That's what their podcast is. And they said, multiply everything that you hear that's negative by 2 and cut everything positive that you hear in half. Because if it's positive, you know what? They're inflating it to get the positive news cycle.
Sure.
And if it's bad, they're downplaying it. They're cutting it in half. So if they say it's going to be 2 to 4 weeks, I'm going to say it's going to be 4, which is going to put us right around week 2. But then I don't know how your injuries work. How my injuries work is I might be, able to do more stuff. Like, you tweak something in the gym, you tweak your low back, you pull a hammy, whatever that is. You may be able to resume, but you're not at 100%. You got to get that on ramp and get some reps on your body. So
it's tough. You're not going to get those immediate returns, I think, like a lot of people want. Especially, I mean, it's just a downward spiral now from going like alpha to then the nuke news.
Well, then yes.
It's been a rough ride.
It's been a rough off season for Treylon. Yeah. Not even a rough off season. It's been a rough last month.
Yeah.
The last 4 weeks. But here's the thing: I love using news like this to buy. And you guys know, if you listen to the Dynasty WarZone for any length of time, I am not the world's largest Treylon Burks guy, but I will tell you, I think Tennessee is going to be a buy on offense next year. And we talked about it the other day on the main show. We talked about Tajay Spears, a couple of year investment at the running back position. Treylon Burks. I think Kyle Phillips is a big winner in all of this. Like, if you like, I was helping one of our patrons of the league where he started 13.
Oh, wow.
I mean, if I'm in a league, I think the deepest league I play is 12, but that brings into play guys like Kyle Phillips. If he misses any length of time or has a setback in his recovery, it brings in Nick Westbrook-Akine.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think Tennessee's a year away from being a young, up-and-coming offense. That's my thought.
Do you think this helps Chig a lot more? Because I've been seeing him fall in some
100%.
Yeah, I've been seeing him fall just like he has been in drafts. I'm like, he definitely should get a huge bump here because now he's kind of back to where he was and when people were all bullish on him, really.
Well, and he's going to be getting the attention. He's going to be a bigger part of the offense, and then the offense is going to have to work Treylon back in.
Exactly.
And then is he like the fourth option? Because option A is Derrick Henry.
Yep.
Option B is Derrick Henry. Option C is probably DeAndre Hopkins. Option D is Okonkwo. And then they'll start working Treylon Burks back in. But that's great because he's going to disappoint. And, people are going to be bummed because what's your league mate going to do? He or she is going to plug, okay, Treylon Burks is active, and they expect starter points out of Treylon Burks. They're not as pragmatic as we are. They're not willing to say, you know what? if he was fully healthy, maybe he would have like 12 to 14 points in PPR upside. But like this week, I understand I'm probably going to get 8 or 9, and I'm hoping for a touchdown. And when that doesn't happen, that's going to create disappointment. Nothing creates better buying windows than disappointment in season. Now, news out of season can drive down prices. Nothing inflates the value of old guys more than positive performance in season, and nothing deflates anybody's value in season worse than underperformance. It's like, if Bijan comes out and has a stinker in week 1, you'll hear it. There's a pessimist out there going, is he really worth what I paid for him? I'm like, give it a break. We're one game, but it's going to happen. You know it. I know it. That's how we roll. So that's the news. I do want to get into these camp stories because, again, I don't want to make this a 3-hour banger because I do have to edit it and make it into a show. Now, last week, we talked about Dallas. We talked about Miami. And we talked about the Tennessee Titans, but let's talk about the team real quick that I think is quietly transitioning away from the run game. Because in the past, if I had historically said that the Cleveland Browns were a run-first team, you would have probably have agreed with me.
Absolutely.
But they've done nothing in that backfield really behind Nick Chubb. They got John Kelly Jr. He was playing tonight in the Thursday night game. Jerome Ford got hurt.
Yeah.
And then there's Demetric Felton. And so the question I ask is, wouldn't a run first team have jumped the line and signed a Zeke or a Dalvin Cook ahead of New England and the Jets? Or would they re-sign Kareem Hunt by now?
I was going to say they could have definitely have brought back Kareem Hunt by now, for sure.
We've seen him in the last year and a half extend. I don't want to say re-sign, but like they've reworked the contract of Amari Cooper. They re-signed David Njoku, who was making Mark Andrews money. Now that's a crime in and of itself.
That contract's crazy.
He makes like $100,000 more or less. It's like it's a quarter of mil off plus or minus of Mark Andrews. That is bananas, banana boat. And then they traded for Elijah Moore, and then drafted Cedric Tillman, and then they still have a guy I like in Donovan Peoples-Jones. So my first question with you about this team is, do you think they're truly transitioning to a pass-first identity, potentially in an effort to keep up with the Ravens and the Bengals and potentially even the Steelers, who have looked good?
Well, this AFC North, man, is completely changing from what it used to be. Tough defenses, low-scoring games, run the ball, like your old-school football. Ravens really have flipped the script there in this thing, just the high pace and everything. So, yes, no, I think they are transitioning in this. So, with Kevin Stefanski's offense, it definitely seems to be more so I would like to word it like, shout out to the Podfather. He was kind of talking about this like about a month ago. Like, in Houston, Deshaun Watson could just have like free-for-all. He could just kind of make plays happen, but it's kind of very scripted and just here's your first read, here's your second read offense. So, it's an interesting offense for Deshaun Watson. I don't know if it fits him personally the best. It did seem this was kind of a ownership move. So I'm not quite sure he's the perfect quarterback for this system, but it does seem they are trending that way. Like you said, the answers in the backfield 100% trend towards more passing, especially with Felton probably being the main backup now. He's definitely a pass-catching guy. I think he was even maybe a receiver at one point.
He was. That was his primarily designation when he came out of UCLA was as a wide receiver.
So, yeah, if that's your main backup right now, because I was actually really excited about Jerome Ford. I have him in my main league. I was very excited about that. I'm like, oh, man, it's like Kareem Hunt had a ton of work. They're not really addressing the position. It's going to be perfect. I mean, I'm sure they're going to feed Chubb, obviously, but I mean, you can only feed a workhorse so much. I mean, I would say he's probably second to Derrick Henry in like pure workhorseness, if that's the word.
I mean, it is now. We make up a lot of new words. I mean, me and friend of the show, Dr. Kyle Bowser's a doctor of physical therapy. Yeah, he used to do some stuff with us here on the show, and you may see him a little bit this season. Spoiler alert, new segment. But, we invented the word the freest, because it's, like if you go do a 5-star review for the Dynasty WarZone podcast, that is the freest way to help us. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, that is also another freest way to help us. It costs you zero. It's free 99 to subscribe to the YouTube or leave a
Free
podcast.
99.
Free 99. You love it. But you were just mentioning Nick Chubb.
Yes.
So how fast in season are you selling Nick Chubb? And then my follow-up question is, are guys like Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry, are those type of running backs a dying breed that,
Yes.
to a lesser extent, guys like Dameon Pierce will carry that mantle going forward? But how soon are you looking to offload Nick Chubb in season if you're not contending or things aren't breaking your way in Dynasty?
Well, to flip that back on you, the question with, running backs, is it a dying breed? Do you think that has more to do with the running backs that are currently in the NFL now? Like, do those running backs just not exist anymore? Or is it more just like the NFL teams know that they just can't handle those workloads and just makes more sense to spread it out?
Well, let me turn it back on you. We're like playing like beer pong. We're like playing tennis up in this mug. We're playing tennis up in this mug. Who are the highest paid running backs in the league right now? Because I can tell you who they are. They're the two outliers because the average at the top is about $12 million. The two outliers are Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
What do those guys have in common? They have that Jahmyr Gibbs style build. Now, Gibbs is more built like Christian McCaffrey than he is Alvin Kamara. Kamara is a little bit stockier than both.
Yeah.
But both of those guys and Jahmyr Gibbs are elite pass catchers. And I think more of these guys in college and even like the high school running backs, they've realized that as much as they maybe respect and want to be like a guy like Derrick Henry, they probably understand that the way to get paid if I'm going to play the running back position professionally is I've got to be more versatile. I've got to be more involved in the passing game. So
100%.
I think the days of emulating Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, that steamroller bruising style back are over.
Yep.
And it's like the wide receiver position. Everything's getting smaller and lighter. Part of the reason why, and I don't want to turn this into a Podfather Quentin Johnston versus Zay Flowers rant, even though I'm on his side. But what's the NFL told us about the wide receiver position over the last handful of years?
Oh, yeah.
The big body Des Bryant outside clasher guy is not how we win in the NFL. It's precision. It's getting open. It's creating separation. Why do we need to create more separation? Because the quarterbacks are more athletic than ever, but they're also not as accurate. And how do you make an inaccurate quarterback become more accurate? The same reason why C.J. Stroud and Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields and those guys are more accurate in college because their wide receivers are elite separators. They get open. So everything you have to go as a dynasty gamer, you have to go where the NFL is going. So for me, yeah, I think I'm offloading Nick Chubb as soon as possible. It's like right now,
Yes.
I'm not going to rehash the 40 minutes of conversation I had with Matt and Seth the other day on the Dynasty Roundtable or on our patron pod the other night. But I think this creates a nice buying opportunity with Breece Hall.
Oh,
And if I have if I have a nervous Nelly contender that's really counting on Breece Hall to help him or her win a championship, I'm going to start with Nick Chubb straight up, and then I'm going to keep incrementally adding until that other GM says yes.
I love that. Yeah, no. To kind of cross-reference sports here, it's almost like how you could get by in the NBA without a jump shot. And you could do every other skill. Oh, he's still good. He's still good. Ben Simmons is a great example of that. Nowadays in the NFL, it's almost like, oh, you don't catch passes as a running back. You got to be on there because it just makes sense. Like when you're out there, it's like, okay, it's going to be a run play. Okay, this guy's out here. It's going to be a pass play. It makes it so much harder to defend when you are the Christian McCaffrey, Tony Pollard, whatever, and you can do both, Jahmyr Gibbs, etc. It's so much harder to prepare for. You don't know what's coming. But like you said, like if Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb's out there, most likely, it's either going to be play action or something. But it's a lot harder to defend.
It's not a designed pass. If they beat you,
exactly.
If they beat you with a reception, because we've all seen the video of Derrick Henry taking 176 yards on a screen pass. That wasn't the design, though. He may have been the fourth option, and Ryan Tannehill or whomever just checked it down to him to avoid a sack or whatever. And then to their credit, Derrick Henry works his magic because he's big and fast
Yeah.
But I do think that's where the league is going. Last question on Cleveland, and then we'll move. And I'm going to put you on the spot right now before we move on. Let's do this one more time. Let's do this one more time next week. We'll do some more storylines next week.
Cool.
Because I want to give all these storylines the credit they deserve, and I don't want to rush through them. So we'll do the Baltimore one. We'll stay in the AFC North, and then we'll come back next week. We'll do a couple of more, maybe wrap up some preseason news, and then we'll put a bow on the bonus podcast next week.
Sure.
Because the following week will be Labor Day, and if you think I'm working on Labor Day, I respect the great American tradition of Labor Day. So
That's right.
We'll come back and we'll do some more of these because I think these are good conversations to have. But Elijah Moore, you buying? You selling?
What's my window right now? Am I a contending team? Or am I not? Am I in between?
I think Elijah Moore could help both. Now, I think if you're a contender and you think Elijah Moore is going to help you again, you're starting 10, you're starting 12, you're starting 13 spots.
Yeah.
You're going pretty deep if you're counting on Elijah Moore to contribute this year. But if you're not, like if you're not contending, like I'll tell you a deal right now that I'm going to make because we've talked multiple times across multiple shows. 24 first and Superflex and tight end premium are going to be worth more because we actually have really good quarterbacks this year. We've got Caleb Williams. We've got Drake May. We've got, I don't know, he's in that category, but we got Quinn Ewers. We've got Marvin Harrison Jr. We got the tight end from Georgia. And we've not even talked running backs yet. The other wide receiver at Ohio State. 2024 first are going to be pretty valuable because of the quality at the top. I don't know about the depth, but I know the top end talent is there. So if I could, like, if I'm not contending and I could move Stephon Diggs for Elijah Moore in a first, I'm gone. Like shit through a goose, just like gone, just done and done. I think I think you could probably get a little bit more than that for a guy like Tyreek Hill or a guy like Cooper Kupp because they're just so good in season. Yeah. They'll command a little bit more, but getting that first is also so basically. Again, this is all theoretical, but you could look back a year from now and you could have turned Stephon Diggs or Cooper Kupp or Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams or one of these 29-year-old to 30-year-old wide receivers. You could have turned that guy into like the next young and up-and-coming wide receiver and a first in a potentially really good class. Could you, what's the old expression? Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. You could have, tried to held out and, been hoggish and get as much as you possibly can. Or sometimes you just cash out on a deal and you're very happy. And I think Elijah Moore is going to do well. I think he wins in the way that Justin Jefferson wins. And I'm not saying he's Justin Jefferson, but he's that possession type, can get a lot of catches, multifaceted wide receiver, talented guy. I am buying right now on Elijah Moore.
Well, it tells you a lot, I think, from the Browns' perspective. Like, it just clearly something didn't happen in New York, A.J. Brown also was on the record. I know they both are Ole Miss guys, but A.J. Brown literally said, this guy is better than me. And we know how good A.J. Brown is. Is that the truth? We don't know, but I think he's saying he's still a damn good football player.
Well, I think what he's saying is first of all, that's a humbling statement to make as an athlete at any level.
Yeah,
high school.
Yeah.
To look across and just honestly say, hey, that dude's better than me. You've got to take that. That's not noise.
Correct.
That's news, and we have to respect that. And again, I like the way that he wins. He's not the speed guy. Like he's not the John Ross. He's not the big body clasher. Yeah. He's the guy who can play in the slot. He can play outside. He can run and operate out of a multiple number of formations on an offense. I think we're going to look back right now and in a year we'll be like, why didn't we seen this sooner? I tell you right now, if there's a breakout wide receiver that's going to break out all over the place, that's especially at a reason. That's not a rookie.
Yeah.
That's at a reasonable price. It's Elijah Moore.
Yeah. And like I said, like what I was getting at was as analytical as the Browns are, like they just saw a depreciated asset. He was in an unfortunate situation with the quarterbacks last year with New York. He had a really good rookie season. He was supposed to break out last year, just kind of everything just didn't really fall his way. And they're like, hey, let's go take a thing on a town. He's only 23.3 years old right now.
Well, and Cleveland needs him to work.
Exactly.
Cleveland's $80 some odd million over the cap next year.
Yep.
And he was a second round pick.
Yes, correct.
teams that invested second round picks on wide receivers like Denver with Marvin Mims, they need him to hit. Cleveland,
they gave up a second, right, to get him?
They gave up a second. So essentially that was their second round pick.
Right.
They need him to hit in the same way that Denver needs Marvin Mims to hit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're going to invest in him. I'm a buy. We covered Nick Chubb. So we're going to hit one more AFC North team. We'll get out of here. We'll come back. We'll do some more next week. But before we do, we'll talk about the Patreon. I mentioned it earlier, patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. This is the not freest way that you can help the show, but it might as well be. It's $5 a month. And you may say to yourself, what do I get for being a patron over at patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone? It's a damn good question. I'm glad you asked. Here you go. You get an extra show every Monday, which is usually the overtime, which you put out. Normally, if you're just a Dynasty Warzone podcast listener, you don't get the audio version of the overtime. You have to go to playerprofiler.com and watch it on the YouTube channel. I put it on the main show. You get the main show early and ad-free. No commercials, no Podfather draft kit, no underdog, no athletic greens, nothing like that. No commercials. You get it early. You get it ad-free, as well as Kevin and myself. We jump on 15 minutes early. We'll kibitz back and forth. We've done movie stuff. And then when you have situations like you had this past Monday with Zeke and Dalvin Cook signing, I jumped on and did an emergency edition right there. Why make my patrons, our best loyalist supporters, why make them wait? And I do want to say what's up and welcome to Alex and Jake. Those guys have joined this week. Glad to have you because they're in the group chat. And we have a great group chat. And like tonight, I threw out there hypothetically. It's like, hey, I'm not saying I'm worried, but are we talking enough about the fact that Anthony Richardson gained 10 to 12 pounds of muscle in the offseason, and he just doesn't look as fast as he did at the Combine or he did at Florida? We talked about that in the group chat today. And then finally, you get one-on-one help with your roster. You can DM me. You can text me. We can help you with situations. We can help you with trades. Yes, all of that is really $5 a month. So if that's the kind of thing that interests you as the season's kicking off, head over to patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. That's patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. And we'll get you in. So one last thing. You ready?
Well, back to your Patreon. You can't beat emergency podcasts. Like, that's the best thing. Like, as someone who is dying for immediate, and we are an immediate society. Like, I want people's reactions right away. So, like, when something big like that happens, I'm like, well, what is it? All these analysts think. What do I think?
It wasn't like a 10-hour thing, but like it was my initial thoughts, right?
Exactly, it's the best.
It was 10 minutes.
It's good stuff.
I don't know what's worse. It's like having to wait like. Is it the last minute of your food on the microwave, or is it the last minute when like you're on a rower or a treadmill or something like that?
That's pretty bad, yeah.
Those might be the two longest minutes, but you just want them to be over with. Immediate gratification.
Yep.
But the group chat started right away, right? We were all over that,
of course,
like a duck on a June bug. So of course we were all over that at patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. Let's get into the Ravens real quick. Let's take this one home on the Baltimore Ravens. And my question to you is, does Baltimore's running back room tell us about their future plans in 2023 and beyond?
I've been thinking about this for weeks, and it does.
Because if you look at...
wild. It's weird.
Well, Lamar has an injury guarantee now. So yes. I think you're going to see Lamar potentially getting back to running at 2019 levels.
Yeah.
Because in 2019, that was his MVP year. He ran like the wind. And you've got J.K. Dobbins on the pup, holding in, wants more money. I need to make sure he gets checked for CTE. How the hell does a guy who has 9 starts in his 3-year career hold in for more money?
He's off the pup, though.
Oh, well, great. Wake me up when he does something on the field. Off the pup, get on the field. Gus Edwards, post-ACL.
Yep.
Looked okay. Justice Hill, more of a special teamer, and he sucks. And then you got Melvin Gordon, and he's old, and he sucks.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, does this allow a guy like Gus Edwards to be useful, again, in those deeper leagues like we mentioned earlier? Does that allow a guy like Gus to be useful in 2023? like in a deep league? I think because he's been useful before.
It has to be somebody. So, I mean, the answer is yes. I have Gus in a league. I've held on to him for like 3-4 years through the injuries, everything. It's just when he's there and he's the main guy, which trust me, with being behind J.K. Dobbins, that happens. So he's plug and play. So it's phenomenal to have him on your roster. He costs absolutely nothing. I'm sure if someone else had him, you wanted to try to go get him, it probably wouldn't cost you too much. But like when he's there and he's the guy, he's great. My thing though with J.K. Dobbins, I think he's actually kind of a value right now. I'm a risky player personally. I really love taking chances. If this thing hits, it's going to hit. And now I'm not saying, this guy is going to be an absolute like out of the world star, top 5 running back, but I think he is probably where people are conceived. And if you've held on to J.K. Dobbins this long, you're probably at this point just tired of seeing the news. Like you said, all this news with the pup thing and he wants a contract, he's holding in, blah, blah, blah. You're probably just as fed up. And to me, I take that as an opportunity to buy. I think that he's motivated. He's coming up on a contract. He does love football as much as little as he's played. And I think this is a motivated guy in a new offense that knows that, like, dude, you really haven't done much. And I'm sure they're probably saying that in contract negotiations or whatever is going on behind the scenes. So to me, it's an interesting. I wouldn't mind having at least these 2 members of the backfield. And honestly, I'm kind of talking myself into buying J.K. Dobbins and right now, and I'm sure, like I said, you probably could get him at a pretty good discount.
J.K. Dobbins, 24.7 years old, so 24 and a half.
Yep.
He's brushing right up against that age apex. Not that it's a horrible deal.
I just he's really boomed when he really has. Like Buffalo, he had 22.3 points per game. He had points in that game. He had 18, a 13.8 game.
Let me hit you with some would you rather on J.K. Dobbins. So I'm using playerprofiler.com rankings, proprietary information. You should buy the all-in package and you would have access to this as well.
Absolutely.
Nestled around him are guys like Ramondre Stevenson, Javonte Williams, Damian Pierce, Derrick Henry, DeAndre Swift. Of those names, who would you rather have? Would you rather have Javonte Williams? I would rather have Javonte Williams. He's a year behind the injury curve, but I think he's the better football player. I said what I said.
That's a toss up for me. I don't want to give a cop out. They're both kind of the same player, injury history wise.
Let me ask you another question.
Sure.
You're not a contender. Maybe you're just all
right. Javonte, then in that case, that makes it a lot clearer.
I'm gonna go to Ramondre Stevenson. Would you be happy to move? Like, you'll give up Ramondre, you'll take JK. What kind of package do you want back? Would like a second get it done? Would JK in a second get you to? I think it would me too.
Yeah, I was thinking second for sure.
I'm going to go back to pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. You don't get the deal done if you ask for J.K. Dobbins and a first for Ramondre Stevenson, but I think you may even get 2 seconds.
And as a Ramondre guy, I mean, I actually have him in my main Dynasty league, and I wouldn't mind doing that to kind of gather another asset for maybe another piece. Or still, I like that offense. I love this offense, and I'm a little worried about. I think Zeke's coming in. I think Ramondre's still going to be fine. I think people are blowing up over the hype here, just the fact that Zeke's because someone else is going to still get the carries there. I'm sure that's, you've already talked about that. We don't need to get into that. But, I actually would be interested in doing that for my own team personally.
All right, well, we're in agreement on the running backs. Let's hit one wide receiver. And no, sure. Not Odell Beckham Jr. He's dust.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Zay Flowers. I mean, he is in a different way because he's a different wide receiver and he's a different athlete. I just remember when we were absolutely killing A.J. Brown in his landing spot in Tennessee, and that turned around and bit all of us right square in the ass. And I'm starting to get those vibes with Zay Flowers. He is embarrassing people out there right now in joint practices. He is showing no mercy. And I think this is going to be more of a passing offense. Because one of two things have to happen based off the storyline of this running back room. Either Lamar's going to run at 2019 levels, or they're really going to turn it loose and put more passing volume out there. One of those two things have to be true. So
totally agree.
Are you more in on the passing volume and it's good for guys like Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers? Or are you of the mindset that Lamar returns to 2019 top 5 QB form?
I'm more on the passing side. The injury designation and insurance is a phenomenal part because I think he was pulling it back because of that. And that was very crucial to them winning, I think. Like when he was out there doing his thing, that's what really messes with defenses. If he's kind of sitting back there and they know that he's a little hesitant, which, I mean, rightfully so, he was playing on a one-year deal essentially last year. And it paid off for him, which is phenomenal. Though I think this just sets Mark Andrews up to have maybe even a Kelsey-like season. And I'm so excited for Mark Andrews this year. I can't get enough of Mark. I think I don't want to say it's a little bit of both because I think he's going to definitely run more than last year. But back to Zay, like Zay can separate, man, and just like he is, like you said, he's just dusting guys. And Odell Beckham's posting like Zay is him, and like this is guy is next. Like, he's going to be a problem, and like he is just a freak athlete that is so quick, and his cuts are just disgusting. As long as he can separate and everything, I think he's going to be phenomenal too. So I think he's going to have a great rookie season here. To ask you a question, where are you on Rashad Bateman?
I couldn't be further out. I think Rashad Bateman is a hack. I think he is a figment of the Devi world's imagination.
Yeah.
I think he is more sizzle than substance. And he's a jag at this point. He's just a guy. As my son would say, he's a bot. He's an NPC.
Yeah. Wasn't Tyler Johnson even better than him at Minnesota?
Minnesota's full of nice people, but not with nice wide receivers.
Yeah. Is it the draft capital that keeps people coming back?
I think there's just certain guys that once you get that reputation, it's like Corey Davis. It took half a decade to shake it. People were finally like, yeah, fuck it. I guess Corey Davis is never going to happen. I guess I'll just go home and cry now. But back to Lamar to wrap this thing up with Lamar I don't know that you're going to get 2019 Lamar where you had 3,100 yards passing and 1,200 yards rushing and 36, passing touchdowns. But I do think 2020 Lamar is probably what I would bank on. Right. And anything above that is just gravy for me. He threw for 2,800 yards in 15 games. He threw for 26 touchdowns and still ran for 1,000. And then that doesn't even factor in the rushing touchdown. And if memory serves, he finished as like QB 9 that year. Sure. And like he didn't play that 16th game because, they were resting him for the playoffs. If memory does serve, they got upset by Tennessee that year, if I recall. Maybe It was Buffalo, but it was something like that. It was red, white, and blue, whatever, close. But I think that's kind of your floor, is that 2020 season. If he stays healthy, that's your floor with Lamar in this new offense. That QB 8-9, and that's a hell of a floor, guys. That's a hell of a floor, and his upside's that QB 1 overall. So as a guy who I think justifiably and rightly had been lowering Lamar based off the uncertainty of the contract, the fact that he had been right around 770 yards the last 2 years, he'd only played 12 games the last 2 years. I think I was justified in having some skepticism about Lamar, but I think the contract with the injury guarantees, the additional weapons, the new offensive coordinator in a division where you have to keep up, and do more of the passing game and be in high scoring games. I think we should be firmly back on Lamar. I really like where Player Profiler has Lamar as QB6 in a dynasty league. I think that feels really good right now.
It does. Yeah, I think he's clearly, from a just this season standpoint, probably a top 4. I think he's solidified, because everybody talks about the big 3 of Allen, Mahomes, and Hurts. I think he easily solidifies himself as the 4th guy, and I think he kind of has broken into that tier. I say is they're all 4 in tier 1 for this upcoming season.
I do slightly disagree with the player profiler consensus rankings. They have Lamar 6 and Trevor Lawrence 7. I'm going to flip-flop those two. I don't have a problem with the top, and I'm not going to give away rankings. I don't have a problem with the top 5, but I would flip 6 and 7.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely taking, and that's a huge teardrop for me between Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields, because Justin Fields potentially can do it, whereas Lamar has done it. And
you're sleeping easily at night if knowing you have Lamar.
People tell me that Justin Fields can muster the forward pass. I've seen Lamar do it, and I've seen Lamar do it pretty well.
Yeah.
Especially within the way he plays the game. But I'm going to bring you back, and we're going to do this one more time. I promise we're going to get to the other team in purple. We're going to do the Minnesota Vikings. We'll do one other unspoken, rarely spoken. You only get it on the Dynasty WarZone bonus podcast with producer Kevin.
That's me.
That's you, man. That's you. Listen, I really appreciate you jumping on and helping me out with these shows. I don't mind doing bonus content, but I think for both the listener and myself, it's a little tedious just to listen to one person for 30 to 45 minutes. And it makes it great having you on here. And I think you're doing a great job. So really appreciate it.
That.
And you'll be there producing our rebuilding show this Sunday on the Player Profiler Network. Pretty excited about that.
Yep, good show coming up.
We're going to hit you with some rebuilding facts, and then we'll be right around the corner, gang. We'll be ready for the regular season. But I'm going to get this guy out of here. It's late at night on the East Coast. He has to go to work tomorrow, and quite frankly, so do I. But we are here for you guys. We're as you're listening to this, we are inside of 3 weeks. We are 20 days away from the kickoff of the 2023 season. Stick with us here at the Dynasty WarZone. We got a ton of great shows coming up for you. And subscribe everywhere. But on behalf of that man, his name is Kevin, producer Kevin Smick at Smicky on Twitter. You can follow me. 3 Ys, because why not? You can follow me at DWZ Memphis. And remember, here at the Dynasty WarZone, we're just trying to make the world a better place for fantasy football. We'll see you back here with more storylines. See you guys.